Hi everyone, and welcome back to another week of the Youth Podcast. Today, we're back again with Josh. Say hi, Josh.
Hey everybody.
And Maddie. Say hi, Maddie.
Hello.
So today we're just going to be diving in once again to the stuff we talked about at Youth last night. So I'm probably going to get this wrong because for some reason in my head, Maddie did the junior high teaching even though she didn't. I literally watched the high school teaching. I'm still like, Maddie did it. But anyways, so Maddie's going to share a little bit about what she talked about at high school, and Josh is going to share a little bit about what he talked about at junior high. And then we're just going to keep discussing some things, some major themes that stuck out to all of us throughout the night.
Sounds good.
So before we jump into some of the questions, Josh, do you want to share kind of what you talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before we get into it, I feel like part of the reason you get a little bit confused about which one of us did the teaching last night is because originally Maddie was supposed to do the junior high teaching and I was supposed to do high school, and we swapped. And so, yeah, I got to do the junior high teaching. This is awkward week 2, and it was a really great week. We kind of wrestled with the idea of passion versus obsession. So it's good to be passionate about things. It's something we want to get better at. It's something we want to do better and learn about. But then obsession is when that thing kind of takes over our lives and we start to make decisions based on our obsession. And so I talked really briefly about like my disc golf obsession from a couple years ago, how like I would schedule my day around a disc golf round with Weston and Jared, and I would do all these things and I would like sleep and dream about disc golf. It was really strange, but it was like defining the way that I lived in a way, and I had to take a step back. And that's kind of what happens with a lot of things in our lives that maybe start as a passion, but then turn into an obsession. And then we kind of took one of the themes that we talked about in high school last week. We talked about this idea of just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something. So again, relating back to those obsessions, like just because we can be obsessed with something doesn't mean we should be. And so, yeah, it was a great week, and it kind of talked about, it's one of those really good themes, I guess, because we're talking about sexual integrity and sexual desires and how passion and obsession relates back to that. But it goes beyond just those things, right? It talks about every facet of our lives, again, where passions can turn into obsessions. So I thought it was another great week of junior high.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Again, I didn't tune in because I was at the high school one, but I usually keep both tabs open to watch the chats, and it looked like there was a lot of engagement from the students. So
yeah, absolutely.
Sounds amazing. And Maddie, do you want to share what you talked about last night?
Yeah, I do. So we were on week 2 of the series called More to the Story. And so we were talking all about pornography. And I think the precursor to this conversation is that sometimes when we are exposed to pornography, because really in society, we're all exposed to it through social media, through TV, movies, all that sort of stuff. But the automatic response can be that there's shame in terms of, oh, I did see this and I did get caught up, and I can't say anything because of shame, and that has to be gone. But we also did talk about yesterday that there is more to the story, and that culture may say pornography is just like, it's not a big deal, it's not hurting anyone, you're not doing anything, all that sort of stuff. But really there is more to the story, in that it's very damaging to ourselves, it's damaging to culture, it's damaging to how we view people, and that is not how God intended for us to live. And so it's really important to realize that the story that culture says, we have to weed through and figure out like there's lies here, and then replacing it with the truth that we need to be standing on, because it's the way that God wants us to live. So yeah, that's where we went.
Yeah, it was super interesting. It was some of the facts that you named at the beginning and kind of in the middle of your message. Some of the things like I didn't know or I hadn't thought about before, and it was very, very interesting. We definitely had some good discussions in the small group.
Yeah, there's even more statistics on the website that they referenced, and I highly recommend looking at them, because there's some good ones. The stats that I always get caught up in are the ones that talk about the brain, because I think the brain is so powerful. And it was saying like it literally physically changes your brain, and it can cause like demotivation and stress and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, yes, these are like, it's powerful stuff. And if it changes our brain, it shows that it really is something that God doesn't want, because he wants us to live very free and full and not bogged down by these things.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how things like that you don't think about that much, but it can it can be so harmful and so powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the 2 messages from last night, I would definitely recommend going and checking them out. They're available on YouTube still, so you can catch those basically anytime if you want to just reference some thoughts, if you want to take some notes, if you already saw it, or if you haven't seen it and you just want to go see what we're talking about. You can definitely go find those on our youth YouTube channel. So we have a couple other topics that we're going to talk about, and it's going to be super great. So stay tuned. But before we get to those, let's quickly hear a word from this week's sponsor.
Hey everyone, so I am here to invite all high school girls to the Therefore Gather conference, which is February 19th and 20th. So it's the evening of the 19th on the Friday, somewhere between 8 and 9 p.m. for a worship night, and then also all day on the Saturday from 10 to 4. So it's all virtual, it is free. You can register at the thereforegathering.com. But we as a North Park high school girls and leaders community want to do this together. So let us know if you've registered, and we're gonna send out a Zoom call that we're all going to participate in. So it feels like we're kind of going together. And then I also will be dropping off a little package for you before the conference to make sure that you are fully equipped to learn and grow for this conference. So make sure you register online and then let us know that you have registered, and we will get those packs to you. But this is just for high school girls and your leaders, and it is going to be a fantastic time. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back. So today we are just continuing our conversation of what Josh and Maddie talked about at youth last night at junior high and at high school. And so they just shared kind of a quick summary of what they talked about. So now I have a question for the two of you that I'm really excited to discuss. So Josh, last night you talked a bit about boundaries, and actually we kind of talked a bit about it in high school as well in different ways. But I'm very curious for you two personally, how do you set boundaries for yourself, or how do you know when to set boundaries, or how to go about doing that? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Again, going back to the understanding of like passion versus obsession, I think that really involves, like we talked about in junior high, setting good boundaries. But we also talked about how you need people to help you do that, which I think is really interesting, because I think God has created us to be people who desire community and who need community. And so when we have people to help us set boundaries, we're a lot more likely to actually carry out those boundaries, if that makes sense. But you asked, how do you get to the point where you set those boundaries? I think as you sense that something may be becoming an obsession, and you really can't help yourself with something. And again, like we can talk about that in terms of like what you're seeing on the internet, but also in terms of like who you're spending time with, right? I know not all of our junior highs are kind of entering into relationships right now, but especially in junior high and the beginning of high school and throughout high school, there's this real chance that you're going to get obsessed with a person, which is like really the first time in your life, I guess, that you would become obsessed with a person, and you can't stop hanging out with that person or talking to that person, DMing that person. So there's like this understanding of when you realize that it's taking over other areas of your life where, again, we talked last night about how if you find yourself like getting really upset with like your younger brother because he's calling you out on something, it's maybe an indicator that you're spending too much time with a person or with something. And so then there's like this thing that goes off, and it's like, oh yeah, I need to set some boundaries for myself. And then all of a sudden it's bringing other people in to see what's going on, that may be some blinders that you don't see about yourself. So yeah, that would be my response, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love the first part of your answer really made me think of like an accountability partner in a way, or like multiple accountability partners, but just, coming in and being like, do you realize how much time you're spending there? Or like, do you realize that like you're not doing this anymore because you're doing this? Or just the awareness of like, you got so worked up about this. Why were you so worked up about this? But it's so hard to come to those conclusions yourself sometimes, because you can't see that, or you don't realize how much time you're spending on something. So definitely agree.
And I think you nailed it there. Like, it's also not, we have this understanding, I guess, because of maybe it's the way I grew up. I don't know about you guys, but when you think of the term like accountability partner, for me, that was always like, you don't want to be looking at this thing on the internet. And so you need an accountability partner. But then as you kind of mature, you realize like you can have accountability partners for every area of your life so that they can help you just to get better and to continue learning and to set good boundaries in all aspects, right? So yeah, I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, great points.
Y'all are preaching truth. I don't even need to be here.
Yes, you do.
No, I'm so on board with that in terms of accountability and making sure that we have wise people in our lives. That is so important. And people that you trust, and that when they speak truth into your life, you know that they have your best intention. Because if you just have someone from the side of the street tell you to do whatever, you're not going to really listen to them. But you need those people in your life, which takes time to build and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so my thought to this question was, I took a bit of a different spin, because sometimes when I think of boundaries, I can think of like putting me in a box and giving me all the rules of things not to do. And my automatic reaction to that is like, get me out. And I know like boundaries, I get that I'm taking this a little bit of a different direction. But as an example, I was at the dentist this morning, and not saying boundaries for dental hygiene, not promoting that, but
brush your teeth, everyone.
It's true. It's true. My dentist gave me the tip that if you're right-handed, you should start at the left top side of your mouth and move across and then down and then back. He's like, patterns are helpful. Fun tip from my dentist. Anyway, what they were saying was, they're like, your teeth are great and good health, all that sort of stuff, even though I haven't been in 2 years. So that is a good thing. But they were saying if you like don't take care of your teeth regularly, like having one good brush every single day, floss your teeth, then eventually down the road, you're going to be at a high risk of getting gum disease, just generally speaking. And so they're like, the things that you do now and the healthy habits that you put in now are going to help you in the long run. And so when I was thinking about boundaries here, I was like, maybe it's more or less of a don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do this, because none of us, I think, really want to live in that mentality. But it's what are the things, the positive things that we're doing every single day that work that muscle, so that when we do get into a place where we're tempted, or we do get into a place where we get caught in a really tough situation, or we did do something and we need to confess it to someone, we've already worked that muscle enough in terms of building strong community of people and making sure that we are investing in our relationship with God and doing all of those things every single day to keep ourselves in a good frame of mind. But also, when you get into a place where you are in an unhealthy situation and you know you need to get out, if you've never worked that muscle before, or if you've never invested in a community, there's no chance you're going to do it then. Whereas if you've built into that all the way leading up, you have that already established in your life and can help you going forward. So I think it's the little decisions that you make every single day that build that muscle that really can help in those tough spots.
So good.
And I love that,
why we need you here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Maddie, great
It's
points.
a collective process.
We were actually talking about this a bit in my small group last night. I feel like my small group, if they ever tune in, they're going to be like, why does Hannah always tell me what we talk about? But there you go. This is what we talk about, guys. No, but we were chatting about this a little bit, the idea of like being able to set boundaries while you're, or not even boundaries, but just like healthy habits while you're in a safe, healthy place, so that when you get to those places, because it's going to happen, like no matter, like, it's not going to be everybody's hitting the same bad situations, but everybody is going to hit at least one bad situation. So being able to have those like healthy habits and healthy boundaries that you set for yourself when you're in that good place prepares you for that bad place. Because we were kind of talking about it in the way of like still like living under your parents' rules, and sometimes parents set boundaries that you didn't necessarily choose to set, but you have the choice to agree with those boundaries and then to like use them and learn from them, so that when you are on your own setting your own boundaries, you kind of have that, you had that experience already of being like, okay, this was something that was said, and even though it was set for me, I chose to agree with it, or I chose to understand why it was happening, so that now I'm on my own and I now have the ability to make these healthy boundaries for myself. So yeah, I thought that was a great point.
Good.
Yeah. I definitely think it's very important to make those healthy decisions in a place when you can. And like parents' guidance is so key. So I was just thinking of like this past year. So I like to think in terms of like holistic. So like the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And so I'm constantly thinking through all four of those things. And so at least, so like a year and a half ago, I really invested in all four. I was at a really great place. And then all of a sudden there was a life situation that like sucked all of my emotional stuff out of me. Like I was conked out emotionally. But because I already had habits physically, spiritually, and mentally already really strong, when the emotional one went for me, I could then invest all of my time figuring this one out because these ones already had established habits. And so then I wasn't like floundering because all four of them were just gone. It was okay, these three are already established healthy habits. They're going to keep me grounded. And now I can work on this one and make sure that I can get myself back on track. So whereas if you have none of those habits in place, it's really hard to get back up.
Yeah.
That's great.
I don't know if this is a really overused analogy, but the first analogy that pops into my head is like swimming. Because when you learn to swim, you're in the pool and you're like doing things in the water, but you have a teacher and you have like a dock underneath you and you have floaties. And it's like you're learning these things in a safe environment. Because at some point, all of us are going to be thrown into the deep end, or we're all going to be thrown into a pool where it's like, you don't have the dock, and now what? But because you spent the time, like, doing those healthy habits and learning how to live kind of in, like, smaller glimpses of, like, that environment, then when you are thrown into the deep end, you're like, oh, it's okay because, like, the wall's right here. Or, like, oh, I can swim now because I did all those, like, practices beforehand. Yeah, that was the first analogy that popped into my head. I don't know if that's really overused, but I don't know. If it helps, there you go.
Am I allowed to ask a question even though this is going to take us overtime?
Sure.
Okay, you can cut it out. You can cut it out if you want. Because I know like this is kind of an abstract concept. I guess we're talking about like just building healthy habits and da-da-da-da-da. To make it a little bit more concrete, can we each share like one or two habits that we've intentionally put in our lives to give examples to people listening?
Yeah. Are you going to start us off? Well, I guess, I mean, you kind of did, but go a little further.
Okay. Okay, two of them. So I definitely think physical exercise is very, very important. It keeps everything healthy. And so either I go on lots of walks outside or doing a daily workout every single day. So that is one. And then the other one is I have a really solid morning routine in terms of like, it's the classic, get up, get your coffee, sit on the couch, get out the journal, get out the Bible. And that routine is like a non-negotiable for me now, that it's a habit in my life.
So for me, there are kind of two things I was thinking about. Number one was my morning routine as well. It's a little bit different depending on the day because it's based on our kids' sleeping schedules. And so if they're sleeping well, that may mean I get a little bit of extra time in the morning. But I try and read like 3 different things as often as I can. So I try and read my Bible every day. And then I've got like some sort of spiritual book on the go. And then a like fiction or nonfiction, like history book. Something that like just to try and change things up because I love to read. And so there's that. And then the other thing is I really like to listen to podcasts, but I don't listen to podcasts for the same reason most people do. Most people listen to them to like better themselves. For me, for my emotional health, I listen to only funny podcasts and things that like remove me from having to think seriously all the time. So my favorite is called The Relevant Podcast. And here's my like little secret with the Relevant Podcast. They have like a serious segment every show where somebody is promoting like a really good book or, you know, some like sometimes they have like these great theologians on there. I very rarely listen to those segments because I'm just there to hear the funny stuff going on. And again, it's just like a chance to help my emotional health with all the stuff that goes on in life. So those are kind of the things I was thinking about.
I love all of that.
Thanks.
I think for me, the first 2 things that popped into my head were kind of, one of them is more of like a boundary thing, and then one of them is more of like a building healthy habits. I think going with the theme of morning routines, that's also very important to me because morning is like my prime time of the day. But I also think it's important to be starting off with, well, at least for me, to be starting off with reading my Bible and spending time with God, because then my day just gets busy and then I just forget. But I think having that practice of spending time with God and like going to him first is really important. So I would say it's very similar to you, Maddie. I usually get up, grab some tea, sit on the couch, read my Bible, journal a little bit. So yeah, I would say that's kind of to help me promote healthy living in all areas of my life. I think that's like my base for, if I'm doing that, then that's where a good start to the day. And in terms of boundaries, the first thing that came into my head was I'm very careful with my social media intake because I find that it's very easy to spend a lot of time on social media. And so not only is that bad because it means I'm not doing other things like schoolwork, but also I find if I spend too much time on social media, it starts to affect me mentally. Like I just start to feel more negative and more likely to feel like anxious and depressed. So I try not to go on any social media before 12 p.m. Just so that, again, because I know morning's my prime time, so I'm like, that way I get a good start to the day. I'm like focused on my life and not people on social media's lives, and I get stuff done so that I like feel good going into the rest of my day. But then I also try to just like restrict it in general and try not to spend too much time looking at other people's Instagram accounts, and I restrict who I follow too, because for the same reason of being like, I only want to be viewing things that are gonna like encourage me and be positive things and not have me comparing myself to people. So yeah, I would say I'm very careful with how much time I spend and then also who I'm like following and stuff like that. So well, thanks for the question, Maddie. Wow. What an
Taking it way over time, but you know.
It's fine. Oh, well, thank you guys for joining the conversation today. I somehow am just always the host now, so there we go. I don't think
Except
that
for
Hannah
next
the
week.
host.
Next
Next
week you're not the host. I'm going to be the host, I guess. Although maybe I should ask Maddie to do it, but we'll see. But
wow, that would be a fun time.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll be fun anyways, but
oh yeah. I mean, okay. All right. Hold on.
Backpedal.
Yeah, next week a little teaser. We've got Hannah teaching at junior high, right? And then Olivia, a Smith. Yeah. Oh no.
throwing it back.
Ooh, see, it's been so long. It's Olivia Zendo is coming on to, yeah. And you didn't even catch it there, Hannah. But
No, I didn't.
she's coming to speak to the high school students, so we're going to have both of them on the podcast next week. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so definitely tune in for that. And thanks for tuning in today. I hope you learned something. Hope something stuck out to you. And if you have any thoughts or questions or want to share some of your boundaries with us and just how you come across that process, feel free to shoot either of us, or any of the three of us, a private message or message the North Park Youth Instagram account or send us an email. There's lots of different ways you can do it, but we just want to hear from you. We want to engage with you. So make sure you're tuning in on Sunday. If you're a junior high, we have junior high Sunday mornings at 9:30.
You got it.
Yep. And then also on Wednesday for everyone from grades 6 to 12, we have our Instagram live at 6:45 p.m., youth at 7. And then next week's podcast is going to be super fun, whoever's on it. So be sure to tune into that, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.